Hello and welcome to the Further Maths OCR Pure Core videos. This is the section on polar coordinates. This is video 1.1, polar coordinates. Okay, so we use generally Cartesian coordinates, which is the x and y coordinates, most often to fix the position of points in space. But there are actually other coordinate systems, and some of them can be useful in different situations. With polar coordinates, what we do is we measure the distance from a fixed point and an angle from a fixed line to locate P. So for example, if we wanted to look at this point here, which in Cartesian coordinates would be the point 3, 2, what we would do is look at the distance from a fixed point, which would be the origin, we call that R, and then we'd look at the angle from a fixed line, which is from this positive x-axis, and that's going to be theta. So we can fix that point P in space using Cartesian coordinates, or we could use polar coordinates. For some curves, polar coordinates are actually more useful to us than Cartesian. Okay, so here's a few definitions for our polar coordinates. The point O, the origin, is called the pole, and OX is called the initial line. We denote that L. Okay, we always measure our angle anti-clockwise from that initial line, and the point P has polar coordinates r theta, where r is the distance from the pole and theta is the anti-clockwise angle from the initial line. We can measure these angles in degrees, but most often we use radians. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to plot some polar coordinates here on our polar grid. And if you remember, each of these polar coordinates are given as r, which is the distance from the pole, and theta, which is the angle we move in an anti-clockwise direction from this initial line. So we're going to plot points A, B, and C. So this first one, we can see the angle is pi by 2, which is the same as 90 degrees. It's really useful to know your conversions between radians and degrees when you're doing these. So we know that it's somewhere along this line, and it needs to be a distance of 3 because r is 3, so 1, 2, 3. So that's where point A is. Now let's have a look at point B. We want to move through 5 pi by 6, so that's going to be on this line here, and r needs to be 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is point B. Now point C, we want to move through an angle of minus pi by 3. So that means we're going to be going in the clockwise direction. And we need to move onto this line here. And that needs to be a distance of 2 from the pole. So this is the point C. Be very careful to check your angles carefully. It can be very easy to, for example, plot a pi by 6 angle instead of pi by 3. Okay, the next video in this series will be 1.2, sketching polar curves.